No Buzz, Just Bees Book Club. Um, Mariana Oliver's Migratory Birds. Um, this is another instance of the another. Uh, this is what the third book I think in the Undelivered Lecture series. It might, I think it's the third. I believe this is the third book in the Undelivered Lectures series from Transit Books, a series that I just completely adore. Um, and this is maybe in some ways the book I feel most complicated about. Not because it's the most devastating, that would be Aftermath. I have a video of that. Um, Not because it's the one I like the most. That would be Stranger Faces, one I've referenced every time I've talked about one of these books. Not because it's the one I like the least. That's upcoming. Just it feels hard to talk about it, whether that's because of my own sort of lack of familiarity with the genre, because this is the one that's least lecture like and most travel writing like, and also most poetic. Two genres that I'm not completely unfamiliar with, but not at all an expert in. Or whether that's because um, there's a spectre haunting this book. And I mean specifically the spectre of communism. Um, or for other reasons entirely. It's all of these things are possible. The let's start with the prose, the or rather the it, most of the books in the Undelivered Lecture series have a sort of elliptical style, right? They are at least patterned after lectures. More accurately, they're almost all pretty clearly lectures that wanted to be delivered but could not have because of pandemic lockdowns and distancing and stuff like that. This one feels much more like a written piece, and I think that is just simply true of it uh, in the facts of the world. This one is written by Mariana Oliver and translated by Julia Sanchez. Um, it's copyright 2014 for Oliver, and the translation is copyright 2021. So this, I think, this may have been a lecture in some sense, but I think it is primarily a poetic essay. Um, and there are bits of language in this that are just absolutely striking. I can't pull anything off the top of my head because number one, the I have the worst fucking memory. Civ up here, just things come in, they stop for a brief second, and they just drip out. Especially if I'm just trying to recall stuff. If I'm prompted, I can usually do a little bit better. But like, so the sediment is still in there, but it's mostly dripped out. Um, but also because I read this in the middle of reading uh, three of the undelivered lectures, all like in rapid succession. So it's there's a blur there as well. But like this is probably the one of the undelivered lectures and one of the books I've read here. Probably not the most, I would say. I could comfortably just flip to any page and find something beautiful. Um, I don't remember if I think I had the last time I read How Much of These Hills Are Gold by C Pam Zhang, or Zhang. I've never even tried to pronounce it. And those are both probably wrong. I think the last time I reread that was before I started this channel, because I think it was when I wrote my last, or it was before I wrote my last year's top 10. That is a book that I feel very confidently that I can flip to any page and just read a random sentence and find beauty in it. Um, but yeah, point being, this is up there. I think with one of those books that I feel I could confidently say like, here, take this, flip to a page, you will find some beauty in the prose, in the poetry. You will find some poetry in this travelogue, in this essay, in this lecture, which I don't mean to minimize what I'm saying here. I hope that's very clear. That like that is a wildly high praise for me. Um, I'm just having trouble talking about this book for that reason, and for the others already outlined. Um, yeah, so a lot of the travels here happen between, or rather, maybe let's talk about how it's framed. It starts with a story of a naturalist, I guess, named Bill Lishman, who invents, or doesn't invent, but pioneers some aspect of ultralight aviation because he's colorblind and has had a dream of flying for a long time, but cannot because of being unable to distinguish between uh, basically tarmac and grass. So they just won't let him even learn. So he figures out ways to fly that don't involve very large machines and engines, and becomes a person who ends up like uh, teaching geese how to migrate. Um, and it's very joyous, and it's very interesting. I Yeah. I have a whole other conversation with a friend in my head now, but I'm not gonna go into it. Um, and then it goes through and talks about a bunch of different places. There's a specific city in Turkey that is like mostly underground that gets talked about. There's a lot of East Germany versus West Germany. There's a whole chapter on Berlin. Um, I mean, Normandy is the name of a chapter that involves a lot of talk about witches and Roald Dahl's witches specifically. Um, Cuba is there. Yeah, a lot of Berlin. Yeah, so like I said, there's a specter haunting this book. And this is one of those things that I'm having trouble talking about because I don't know how to synthesize it in any real way or even to begin to, which is what I'm better at. I'm better at beginning to than actually doing the synthesizing. Um, but there's like just so much about places that have been this just keep running up against what's difficult to talk for me about this book, getting tripped up over the prepositions at this point. You could read this book as a round condemnation of, uh, you know, state capitalism or actually existing communism or um, the many other appellations that have been given to ostensibly communist countries. And you can, I think, equally, at least I could equally read it as a really fascinating sort of, again, poetic, sort of illusory meditation on the extent of the ravages of the Cold War um, from capitalist countries, specifically, uh, Western Europe and the United States, the way that the dedication to the destruction of communism or of any sort of alternative to capitalism, let's say, uh, has left the world full of massive scars. I think there's a very strong read in that direction in the chapter where she talks about Cuba, and specifically talks about the way that the U.S. distributed leaflets in Cuba that were just straight up lies about how the government was going to take away Cuban children, and send them to education camps, and how the brightest were going to get sent to the USSR, and the historical fact that then a bunch of Cuban children were basically shipped off to the United States. Uh, and then there was the disaster of the Bay of Pigs, where the U.S. tried to assassinate Fidel Castro, and instead of, you know, allowing those children to go back, basically said, sanctions for Cuba, goodbye, and just cut them off from the world. And so there was a bunch of literal children stranded in the United States, who were given visas because of this propaganda program that the U.S. was engaged in. And then when they cut that propaganda program off, they were just like, no, there's no way to reunite you with your parents. You're just going to be orphans now, or whatever. I think that chapter is a strong argument for this book being about, in some way at least, the the ravages of core capitalist countries, um, brutally exterminating communism, or third world nationalist uprisings, even, that are outside of the scope of communism, as producing massive traumatic scars on the world across the last handful of decades. I think there's other chapters that you could read that tell a different story, and that's another reason I'm having trouble talking about this book. um, Migratory Birds by Mariana Oliver. Um, yeah, I I quite like this. I think this is like top three of the five undelivered lectures, for me. And I mean that genuinely, like extremely positively. Uh, this series has been just like a, a beautiful little revelation for me over the last couple of years, and I like I don't know. It has so much to offer. It is, I mean, this book specifically, again, beautifully translated. Um, just, just gorgeous poetic language. um, and I'm just so happy to have read each of the books in the Undelivered Lecture series by Transit Books. Genuinely not plugging them because this is a Just Bees book club, and if you're not a bee, you're not allowed to be watching this. Um, but yeah, I don't know. This book feels incredibly special to me, and I'm glad to have it and to revisit it at some point. Um, and it just feels so tough to talk about in a way that I think is great. And yeah, in a way that I think is great. I like being in a conundrum. I enjoy it. I think it's nice. Thanks for not watching.